diehard Falcons fan right here.
I'm good.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm good.
Yeah, about damn time. By the way, that's what Lizzo is actually singing about. Is Desmond Ridder starting. That's I swear to God. Like if you listen to the lyrics closely, it's really
it's a lot.
Check it out. That's
Yeah.
Lizzo is literally singing about Desmond Ridder. It's super weird and specific, but that's what she's singing about. Love me some Lizzo.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Love me some Lizzo. Love me some booze. Love me some happy hour. It is noon on a Thursday on Peacock, but it is 5 o'clock somewhere. Jay Croucher. My name is Matthew Berry. Welcome into the happy hour. It's Love-Hate Day. Week 15 is here, baby.
It's here.
It's Ken Walker return day.
It's a good game tonight. This is a fun one.
This is actually a fun game.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it'll be low scoring, but I think it's a fun one.
We don't have to fake enthusiasm about Thursday Night Football. It's an NFC West showdown.
Have we ever actually faked enthusiasm?
Broncos-Colts, I was faking. I was faking for Broncos-Colts.
See, I feel like I was very genuine in my disdain for that.
Yeah.
I mean, the enthusiasm I have is for betting on these things. It's for playing fantasy. It's the fantasy playoffs. It's the first game of the fantasy playoffs. Thank you for tuning in. Let's get you a win. All right, Jay Croucher. Time now for some Roto World headlines.
Some Roto World headlines. Let's start in Tennessee. Treylon Burks still in the concussion protocol. Don't know what's going to happen with his status this week against the Los Angeles Chargers. Any interest in Robert Woods, Nick Westbrook-Akine, your man Chigakonkwo?
Yeah, that's, to me, Chigakonkwo is the guy that's sort of interesting here, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later in the love-hate. He makes the others receiving votes for pass catchers here. But Robert Woods, who's had 6 or more targets in 4 of the past 5 games, and you know what he's doing with that?
Not much.
Nothing.
Yeah.
He's averaging 6.2 fantasy points per game, even when he's getting the workload. Nick Westbrook-Akine does have 2 different games with double-digit fantasy points this game, but whatever. I mean, it's like one was like he basically was wide open. It was a busted coverage, and I think it's hard to expect any of that to happen here. It's also worth noting, right? You think about how this matchup breaks down. Tennessee, really good against the run. Chargers, really good against the pass. So my feeling is that it's a lot of Derrick Henry on the Tennessee side of the ball, and on the Chargers side of the ball, I think it's a Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Justin Herbert game.
Yeah, I will say the one thing is that Nick Westbrook-Akine, he did have 8 targets and a touchdown against the Jags. So he might be a guy who has a bit more upside than Robert Woods, but ideally you're not starting either of these guys in the
I mean, here's the thing. I think you're right. And by the way, could Nick Westbrook-Akine have a good game? Sure. Possibly. Yeah. Who knows? You never. Possibly. Sure. I mean, Tyreek Hill had a big game against these Chargers just last week. I think there's a bit of a difference in talent between those two players.
A small difference.
But to answer your question, sure. Could he? Yes. Am I willing to start him in a fantasy playoffs? I am not.
No, I think that's the right call.
That's the case. Like, listen, guys, it's the playoffs. It's fantasy playoffs. Don't get cute. Don't get cute. I mean, you may be in an injury situation where you have to get a little cute. That's too cute for me.
Yep, agreed. All right, let's talk about the Raiders. They designate
You know who else is cute?
Who's cute?
Lizzo. You know who else is cute?
Darren Waller?
You.
Okay. What about Hunter Renfrow?
No.
And Darren Waller?
Darren Waller's
designated
cute.
to return.
Darren Waller is
from
cute. Hunter
injured
Renfrow
reserve.
is not. This one's a tough one. About what do you do with Darren Waller?
Yeah, I think that you have to start him if he's going to be playing, just because of the dearth of talent.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't even feel good about starting George Kittle tonight, so surely you got to feel pretty good about Darren Waller.
Waller. The Raiders' offense has looked bad. They've been very run-heavy as well. They just haven't thrown. I will tell you that, just a little bit of a heads up here, Derek Carr makes the hate list.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about him coming up here in a little bit as well. And Darren Waller, as great as he is, hadn't been good this year, right? I mean, so far this season is averaging 7.9 fantasy points per game. That'd be tight in 18 on the season on a points per game basis. He's played 4 full games. He's had under 50 yards receiving in 3 of them. The Patriots are a pretty good defense. It's his first game back. But, there's a reason why, as great as he is, as great as his talent is, he's outside my top 10 this week. All that said, to your point, it's such a crapshoot. It's such a dart throw at the tight end position once you get past sort of the obvious good players. So if you don't have a Kelsey, an Andrews, a Hawkinson, a Dalton Schultz, somebody that you feel really good about, if you don't have one of those kind of elite guys, and you're in the I'm hoping for a touchdown kind of area, he's he's at the top of that list of hoping for a touchdown just because based on his talent. And the hope here is that New England always likes to take away whatever you do the best. So my expectation here is Bill Belichick against his former offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels, probably tries to stop the run.
Yep. All right,
or stop Devontae Adams. Either way, Darren Waller should be open.
Yep. Let's talk about Eno Benjamin, who the Saints claimed off waivers. Not sure there's much to break down here outside he just goes into the Mark Ingram role. Ingram was injured, and now it's Eno Benjamin backing up Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's played 5 different games for different teams where he's gotten double-digit touches this year. He's averaging 65 yards from scrimmage. It's a weird one. Right, with Eno Benjamin, like just released from the Cardinals out of the blue.
Yeah, why is he
Houston
not on the Cardinals?
signs him.
Yeah.
Houston signs him, and then they're like, yeah, we're good. Something weird's going on with Eno Benjamin, but for whatever it is, he's now a member of the New Orleans Saints. I agree with you. This is much more about depth and because of the injury to Mark Ingram than it is about a threat to Alvin Kamara's workload. Worth noting that Alvin Kamara's workload hasn't been what it used to be because of Mark Ingram. Feels weird to think that Eno Benjamin's going to suddenly cut into that in a significant way. He's only been there for, a handful of days. So especially think about, like, with the Texans, he was actually a healthy scratch for 2 of the games he played with Houston. So, I don't know. It's worth noting just because he's a semi-name and because of the Mark Ingram injury, but I'm not bothering picking him up unless I had Alvin Kamara, and I'm definitely not starting him.
Yep. Okay, let's talk about Mason Rudolph, who split reps with Mitch Trubisky in practice on Wednesday, and Kenny Pickett, who's obviously dealing with the concussion. Don't really know who of these 3 guys is going to be starting on Sunday in a pretty tough matchup against the Carolina Panthers, whose secondary has gotten significantly better with J.C. Horn playing at a Pro Bowl level. I don't really know there's much to do with this.
Over the last month, the Carolina Panthers are a top 5 scoring defense.
They're really good.
They've played really well. I mean, Steve Wilkes won't get Coach of the Year consideration.
He should be
but
top
he
5.
should.
Yeah, he should.
But
be
he
top
should.
5. Yep.
What he's done to help turn around Carolina has been really impressive, and especially on the defensive side of the ball, where they are top 10 across the board in terms of fewest rushing yards allowed, fewest passing yards allowed, fewest points scored allowed on them over the last month. They played really good defense here, and so whether it's Mitch Trubisky, whether it's Mason Rudolph, whether it's some sort of committee, if you will, you don't feel good, honestly, about any player on the Steelers. I think you're still starting Najee Harris because he's the starting running back. He should get a heavy workload, even though it's a tough matchup here. If Freiermuth plays, he showed up on the report. He's a little banged up. I think you're playing him, but you don't feel good about this passing game at all, especially given that it may not be the same guy throughout the game. Like if they go with Trubisky and he's struggling and they bring in Mason Rudolph has had, I think, 10 career starts. Nothing about those 10 career starts gives you any confidence at all about himself or any of the players around him. Deontay Johnson, back when Deontay Johnson was good, Deontay Johnson and Mason Rudolph starts averaging 10.7 fantasy points per game.
Yep.
So, like, what he is now. I mean, like,
All right, let's stop talking about Mason Rudolph. Let's start talking about some running backs.
Yeah,
running back
buddy.
love-hate. That's the love heart. Cracks like glass. Not cracking like glass lately. James Conner played 95% of the snaps.
He's
plus
healthy.
Against New England. Touchdown machine last year is coming to the fore now. And he has actually you think that it's a tough matchup against Denver, but Denver against the rush is somewhat susceptible.
They've actually allowed 100 rushing yards in 3 of the last 4 games, Jay. You're absolutely right on that. And then if you kind of look at it a little bit closer and you're like, okay, well, what do the Cardinals want to do? They no longer have Kyler Murray. They're going to want to run the ball, right? Yep. They're going to want to run the ball with James Conner, and he's just getting a massive workload. To your point, 95% of the snaps in 3 of the last 4 games. Since he returned from injury, by the way, he's the 6th best running back in fantasy. He's averaging 18.6 fantasy points per game since week 9. You see it there on your screen. The other piece that I think is really interesting, look at your screen there. Starting in week 9, the receptions per game, 5, 3, 2, 3, 6. Like, he's involved in the passing game. To me, the 6 against the Patriots is the really interesting part because of Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy doesn't have the arm strength of Kyler Murray. He's not nearly as mobile as Kyler Murray. Given the struggles of the Cardinals' offensive line, Colt McCoy isn't going to be able to scramble around the way that Kyler Murray can to extend plays. And so what's he going to have to do? He's got to get rid of the ball quickly. Conner, who's a nice pass-catching running back, I think gets more involved in the passing game than he has been this year. Again, you saw the 6 receptions last week against the Patriots when Colt McCoy was just under siege. I think he's a RB1 this week. I think no question.
Yep, Cardinals are 2.5-point dogs in that game, so you expect it will be close enough where game script can give him plenty of carries. Let's talk about Miles Sanders.
Sure.
One of our favorites. Just keeps on producing, and now he has a very favorable matchup. It's a 9.5-point favorite in Chicago, where it will be freezing, but not too many weather elements beyond the freezing cold, and Miles Sanders in a good position to produce again.
A great position. Okay, every single game this year, literally every single game this year that the Bears have played, you know what they've done?
Well, given up a lot of rushing yards.
And at least 1 rushing touchdown.
There you go.
They've given up at least 1 rushing touchdown in every single game they've played this year. And so, to your point, there have been 9 games. You mentioned the line, right? The Philly by 9. There have been 9 games this year in which the Eagles have won by a touchdown or more. Okay, 9 separate games in which the Eagles have won by 7 or more points. And in those 9 games, again, the Eagles are a 9-point favorite. In those 9 games, Miles Sanders has 10 touchdowns in those 9 games. He's averaging over almost 18 fantasy points per game, 17.9 to be exact. He's averaging 90 rushing yards again. In those 9 games in which the Eagles have had a touchdown or more victory, they're 9-point favorites here. Give me Miles Sanders as a top 15 play.
Yep. You know who the Philadelphia Eagles play next week, Matthew?
Who's that?
It's the Dallas Cowboys on Christmas Eve in primetime. I don't think that they want to burn out Jalen Hurts in the second half of a blowout against the Bears. I think it will be the Miles Sanders show on Sunday.
That'll be a fun game.
It's a big one.
That'll be a fun game.
First meaningful game the Eagles have played all year.
Yeah,
first big game since week 2 against Minnesota.
Well, there was a little Monday night game where they lost to the Commanders.
Yeah, true.
The Commanders took command.
I tried to repress.
Hail the Commanders, hail victory.
Yeah.
Listen, the Eagles have lost only one opponent all year long. And you know who that is? The Washington Commanders. Your Washington Commanders. America's Washington Commanders.
Big game for the Washington Commanders as well. Sunday
Very
night
big. This week against the New York Giants.
We'll talk about
it's
it
a
soon.
must-win. It's on Sunday Night Football right here on NBC and Peacock. I'm a company man.
Blockbuster. All right. It's going to be a big game for Miles Sanders. Also going to be a big game, we think, for Isaiah Pacheco, who gets the most favorable matchup in sports, the rushing defense of the Houston Texans.
No team in the NFL has allowed more rushing touchdowns to opposing running backs than the Houston Texans. They give up like the most fantasy points. Pick a stat about the Texans, and it's bad. Like, literally pick a stat, any stat. How about this one? In 11 of the 13 games the Texans have played this year, Houston has allowed 125 or more rushing yards. And so Pacheco, who has a really nice workload, right? At least 15 touches and 80 yards from scrimmage in 5 straight, now gets Houston all in on Pacheco. Top 15 play for me this week.
Yep, I'm with you. 14-point favorites. They will be running the ball.
Yes.
All right, let's get to some others receiving votes. Headlined by the resurgent J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, look, we talked about that long run where he didn't look 100% healthy, but the fact of the matter is he still broke it off, still also converted a touchdown. He actually saw 58% of his snaps last week. Over half his carries gained 5 or more yards. So Dobbins is looking explosive. Again, he ran out of gas on the long run, but as the game got on, he looked closer and closer to the J.K. Dobbins we remember. It was his first game back. You love this matchup with the Cleveland Browns, who've allowed 14 rushing touchdowns to opposing running backs. That's tied for the second most. Some of the other names you see there, Brian Robinson, who's, we've talked about his workload quite a bit. Giants have allowed 160 rushing yards in 4 straight. Robinson gets a ton of work. And how about Chuba Hubbard, who now has back-to-back games with 17 touches, at least 65 yards from scrimmage in 3 of the 5 games since McCaffrey went away. We've talked about this. They want to run the ball. 45 or more rushing attempts in 3 of the last 4 for the Carolina Panthers. There's enough work for both Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard to be flex viable this week against the Steelers.
Yep. Good for you including Chuba Hubbard on that list, even after he screwed you in that Survivor.
He's so screwed. It wasn't he didn't screw me so much as it was, the one that really killed was was Kyler going down.
Yeah.
Hopkins having a bad game, playing against a guy with Evan Ingram, Zay Jones, Brock Purdy.
Just a cocktail of bad.
Just awful. And Foreman should have, I have Foreman on a lot of teams, so would have been nice to have him score. But the Blackshear one is the one that really drove me up a wall.
Blackshear. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
What are we doing with Blackshear? Why is he getting a run?
Speaking of sadness,
inside the 10-yard
let's
line.
talk about the hate list. Headlined by Nick Chubb, who quietly hasn't done anything in 4 weeks. We talked about the Houston Texans, how everything is bad for the Houston Texans. Well, wasn't for Nick Chubb didn't do anything against them either. I know it because I bet a lot of money on him to go over 94.5 rushing yards, and he got to 80.
Yeah.
He's had 3.5 yards per carry the past 4 games, which has coincided with their star center, Ethan Posick, going down for the Browns. So I think they just lost their run game the past month.
They have, and then you also think about how this game maybe plays out. Ravens really good run defense. They've allowed just 2 rushing touchdowns to a running back in their last 6 games. Since week 8, actually. Ravens allow 43.7 rushing yards per game to opposing running backs. That's best in the NFL. I mean, they've been really, really good against the run. So Nick Chubb, to your point, who's had single-digit fantasy points in 3 of the last 4, I mean, he comes in, inside my top 20. I'm at running back 17, but that's the lowest I've had Nick Chubb, I think, in forever.
Yeah, probably in 2 years. Like, this is a guy who just reels off 5 yards per carry consistently every game, and he hasn't done it in the past 4 games. So obviously you're starting Nick Chubb, but not feeling great about it.
Love-hate is all about expectations. I'm lowering expectations for Nick Chubb and probably avoiding him I'm betting the under on Nick Chubb, not playing him in DFS. And finally also Jamal Williams against your fighting New York Jets. We expect a cold weather game. DeAndre Swift not on the injury report so far this week, in games in which he's not on the injury report, he plays a lot more snaps, obviously, and gets a lot more touches than games in which he did show up on the injury report, and though he played. And so I'm a little worried about the workload. He's not getting any passing game usage, right? 6 straight games now with 0 receptions. He's also averaging under 4 yards per carry in that time frame. He's had under 12 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4, even in which he scored a touchdown. Even when he's getting into the end zone, he's still scoring under 12 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games in which he scored. And then you talk about the Jets and their run defense. New York has not allowed a rushing touchdown to a running back in 5 of their last 6 games. So he makes me nervous. He's outside my top 30.
Yep. I think the Detroit offense overall might be in for a bit of an awakening when they play outside in the cold. Jared Goff doesn't like the cold.
I'm in a 16-team league, and here are my quarterback choices. Jared Goff, Deshaun Watson, and Tyler Huntley.
Still Jared Goff. All right, we're going to break. When we come back, pass, catch, or love, hate,
ugly,
including Garrett Wilson.
League.
I mean, that boy's a dog, man, and that boy a dog, for real. He was out there controlling the huddle and keeping it. Never letting the moment get too big, man. It was cool to see, looking back on it now, it's cool to think about. So, I know that I go to work for that boy. He got something special about him.
That was Garrett Wilson, Offensive Rookie of the Year favorite for the New York Jets, plus 175 at BetMGM, talking about his love for the great Mike White. We still haven't really settled on the nickname yet, but we're working on it around the clock.
We are.
Looks like Mike White is going to play through the ribs, though I wouldn't be surprised if we see Zach Wilson.
A nickname, a fun name. I mean, again, so we started the show. Like, is Lizzo if her name is like Mary White?
No.
Right.
Yeah.
I just, like Lizzo's a fun name.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a great name.
Yeah.
Right. She's got the whole persona going on.
Yeah.
Mike White is just snoozy.
Yeah. He needs something like Cobra or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
He just is suddenly known as Cobra.
Yeah, exactly. Cobra White, whatever. Just right, or even an adjective, fighting Mike White. Like if Mike White just got into just hauled off and punched some guy.
Yeah.
Then you're like, oh, he's fighting Mike White.
Yeah.
Let's go. Like he should go to a bar. He should go to a bar fight tonight. Like he should just go start something at some bar. And then he's fighting Mike White. It's like, we got his back.
Yeah.
He walks in. He's got black and blue eyes, maybe like a little.
It's going to come to us.
Bandage.
It's going to come to us, the nickname, and it's going to be glorious. Garrett Wilson has been playing gloriously since Mike White came in as his quarterback. He's playing pretty well with Joe Flacco at the start of the year as well. Just so long as you don't give him Zach Wilson, he just continues to produce at a wide receiver 1 level.
In Mike White's 3 starts, he's averaging double-digit targets. He's averaging 21.5 points per game. That you see it there on your screen. It's a great matchup with the Lions. Since Week 10, they allow the 2nd most yards per game to wide receivers. They've allowed multiple touchdowns to wide receivers in 2 of the past 3. It's Detroit. Garrett Wilson's getting double-digit targets in a great matchup. top 12 play for me this week.
Yeah, a lot of chat about the Detroit Lions and their improving defense. Like, it's fine. They're slightly better. They're still a bad defense, and I think Garrett Wilson should go off against that secondary. Mike Williams is also playing a weak secondary. He gets a very favorable matchup against the Tennessee Titans, who haven't been able to stop anyone the past couple weeks through the air. And he's got a huge night.
And that's the point, right? They're really good against the run. They're bad in the secondary as well. So how does the Chargers move the ball in this game? They throw it, and they're going to throw it to Big Mike, right? So last week he played 66% of snaps, like only 66% of the snap, 2/3 of the snaps, and yet still 6 for 116 and a touchdown. To your point about Tennessee, they allow the most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. They can't stop anyone. Mike Williams, to me, is the top 15 play this week.
It would almost be better if Tennessee was slightly worse at containing the run. Might allow teams to run it a little bit more instead of just throwing for 10 yards per attempt through the air.
Titans have given up a touchdown to a wide receiver in 6 of the last 7 games, right?
Yep.
Sorry, 6 straight games. Titans have given up a touchdown in 6 straight games, and they've given up the second most touchdowns to opposing wide receivers this entire year. Who's most likely to get a touchdown, him or Keenan Allen? I think it's Mike Williams based on the size and the red zone usage.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I'm with you there. Let's go to Dalton Schultz, who's been resurgent since Dak Prescott. Never really kind of made music with Cooper Rush, but
no, he did not.
Is doing it with Dak.
Since Dak returned in Week 7, he's got a 20% target share. 20%.
Yeah.
For a tight end. In this economy, I'm all in. Especially when you think about the Jaguars, right? He's playing Jacksonville. They've given up over 100 yards to tight ends in 3 of the past 4. They've given up a touchdown to a tight end in 3 of the past 4, including 4 total touchdowns. I think Dalton Schultz in this game against Jacksonville, which has a sneaky high over-under. It's the 4th highest on the slate at the moment.
48.
Yeah, and so we're expecting a lot of points to be scored in this Jags-Cowboys game. Yeah, I have Dalton Schultz as a top 5 fantasy tight end.
Yeah. Who's definitively above him at this point, outside of Kelsey obviously is, but then
Andrews, I know Andrews has been bad recently, but I'd still start Andrews over him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I have Hawkinson ranked ahead of Schultz, so probably still Hawkinson too, but he's right there. He's a top 5 guy.
Okay. Let's go to some others receiving votes. Headlined by Brandon Ayuk, who despite having Brock Purdy as his quarterback continues to produce.
Yeah, and they're playing tonight against Seattle, so we're gonna preview the game coming up a little bit later in the show. But just talk about Ayuk very quickly. Over the last 4 weeks, the Seahawks allow the 3rd highest catch rate to opposing wide receivers. Deebo Samuel injured now. That's a 24% target share that's up for grab. And in the 8 games this year in which Ayuk has gotten at least 6 targets, and you think he's got a good shot at getting there with Deebo Samuel on the shelf, he's averaging 15.2 fantasy points per game when he gets that kind of look. And now again, does he have the connection with Brock Purdy that he had with Garoppolo? Not yet, but I think just by process of elimination and the matchup here, Purdy and Ayuk should be a thing moving forward.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because the Seahawks pass defense, their whole defense is just terrible. On the other hand, Brock Purdy he's Brock Purdy. He's still the guy taken last in the draft. Now he's got this strained oblique, so he might not be able to throw the ball 30 yards, and it might not matter because the Seahawks pass defense is that bad. Let's talk about Christian Watson, who has a matchup against the Rams. Look like Aaron Donald probably not going to play in that one, and Watson just keeps on scoring touchdowns for fun.
4 straight games with 6 or more targets. He's got a 24% target share since Week 10, and about half of his passes on that and that stretch have come on deep passes, 15 or yards more downfield. The reason I mention that is because the Rams really struggle against deep passes. They're allowing the 3rd highest catch rate to opposing defenses, and I don't have a stat for this. But I'm just going to tell you, Aaron Rodgers, he listens to all the chatter. No one listens to the chatter the way Aaron Rodgers listens to chatter.
Yeah.
Like you chatter a little bit, and Aaron Rodgers right there.
Yeah.
Like
there's bugs in the wall.
Constantly. He is. Hi, Aaron. He's literally watching right now.
Good day, Aaron.
Like he uses all of it as motivation. So he's gonna be like, man, everyone's writing me off. Everyone thinks the Packers are done. We're still alive for the playoffs. We still got a shot here, and I'm at home on Lambeau in prime time. Aaron Rodgers in prime time at Lambeau Field. He's had 2 weeks to prepare for this matchup. He's had 2 weeks to study the Rams and their secondary. It's like now everyone's talking about Baker Mayfield. I'm Aaron Rodgers. I'm 12, damn it. I'm 12. Aaron Rodgers is going to ball out on Monday night, and one of the ways he's going to do it is Christian Watson. And you know how I know this? Not just the targets, not just the production, but you remember the Dynasty League that I'm in, that I played against the guy that has stupid Ed, and he started Evan Ingram against me, and Zay Jones and Brock Purdy.
Bob Tunyon this week or something?
No. So he's got all those guys, right? You know, and last week I had Kyler Murray, of course, and DeAndre Hopkins, and just, anyway. This guy Ed, stupid guy Ed, has Christian Watson on his team. Didn't play him last week because he was on a bye, but now he's back. He's going to play Christian Watson.
He's going to get 4 touchdowns.
He's going to, he will go off.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
Guarantee.
Yeah. I went Foghorn Leghorn on
Yeah, with the O in the middle instead of the A.
I guarantee Christian Watson will have a big game. He's a very viable wide receiver 3 this week.
Okay, let's pivot to the hate list, headlined by Mike Evans, who, again, it's been a year of almost for Mike Evans. I just think about the plays that he has just.
You don't want to do the others receiving votes?
No, I
took too long with Christian Watson.
Apparently, you went too long. Yeah.
All right, fine.
You want to race through a point on Chigakonkwo?
Yeah, Zay Jones, Greg Dulcich at Arizona. I don't care if it's him, Wilson, or Brett Rippon. Start your tight ends against the Arizona Cardinals. And Chiggy, let's get Chiggy with it. Chigakonkwo now has 3 straight games with 5 or more targets. Chargers allow the most yards per reception to opposing tight ends. I think he's a viable streamer this week. But yes, let's talk hate.
Yes, let's not get Chiggy with Mike Evans, who has seen a steep decline. He has been a couple plays away from his stats looking a lot better, but just doesn't seem to be the same dynamic passing attack.
What week are we in right now?
15.
All right, so week 15.
Yeah.
If I said something since week 9 hadn't happened, that's a long time, right? Week 9 to week 15?
That's a reasonable amount of time. That's
6
weeks. By my math.
Right. And so as the crow flies, it's 6 weeks. And so it just feels like that's a decent enough sample size given what we're dealing with here.
He's not done much in that time, Mike Evans?
He's wide receiver 59.
Wow. So
on a points per game basis.
So he's outside the top 58.
He's barely a top 60 wide receiver on a points per game basis since week 9. And then you think about this matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals. They've allowed the second fewest touchdowns to wide receivers this year. They allow the 3rd lowest catch rate to wide receivers. Tom Brady does not, again, the narrative of Mike Evans changes if that penalty doesn't get called back, but it calls the touchdown back, but it did. And so it hasn't. So yeah, unfortunately, Mike Evans, I'm lowering expectations for him. He's my wide receiver 25 this week, which isn't as low as some of the other people, but that's as low as I've ever had Mike Evans.
Yeah, I'm not giving up on Mike Evans.
No,
he got that touchdown. If he had that catch against Carolina, which was a walk-in 60-yarder.
He's great. The ball has not bounced his way this year.
Yeah. Also hasn't bounced the way of Adam Thielen, kind of in that same cadre of receivers, Mike Evans. And the Colts have been sneakily good against wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I wouldn't say he's in the same category of wide receiver as Mike Evans. I mean, I think Mike Evans, especially at this stage of their
veteran
career,
touchdown-dependent guys who are not performing.
Which is fair. I think Mike Evans is just a much better wide receiver.
He's a better receiver.
Thielen's good, but, at this point of their careers. The fact of the matter is, though, is you mentioned the matchup with Indianapolis, and that's correct. They're really good against wide receivers. They haven't allowed more than 60 yards to an opposing wide receiver. They haven't allowed more than 60 receiving yards to multiple wide receivers in the same game all year. So if you figure, Justin Jefferson's going to get his, he's probably going to get to over 60. Well, again, they haven't given up 60 yards to multiple receivers in the same game all year long. They actually allow the fewest fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Hard to really, get excited about Adam Thielen in this one. Again, he was on the love list last week, and he paid off. This week, he makes the hate list.
Yep, I like it. All right, before we go to break.
You like the hate?
Yeah, I do like the hate on this one. I think the Colts have a sneaky, competent defense, and they should be able to keep him in check.
Probably.
All right, before we go to break, a reminder to download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster and get the latest injury updates, player news, plus much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. When we come back.
For free.
Quarterback love hate.
The app is free.
It's free. It's very free.
Doesn't matter if you're cheap. It's free.
There's been a lot made about Justin, about where he's ranked as a quarterback and everything. What do you think about your quarterback?
He's the best in the league.
Straight up?
Straight up.
What makes him unique?
Composure, confidence, playmaking ability, size, everything. He's just getting better. He's just starting. He's about to blow this league away.
That was Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen making the emphatic declaration that his quarterback, Justin Herbert, is the best in the league. Not sure I would agree with that, but he's been playing like
It's super weird that Keenan Allen has been in the NFL as long as he has and has yet to see Patrick Mahomes play football.
It's a good one.
It seems weird. But, if all you see is Justin Herbert, then you probably think, Justin Herbert is the best quarterback
He's pretty
in the
good.
league.
I mean, the gap between him and Tua Tagovailoa on Sunday night looked like the gap between someone and the best quarterback in the league.
Was significant.
Herbert,
the truth of the matter is that on a pure skill standpoint, Herbert's right up there.
He might be. Last season, a lot of the advanced numbers said Justin Herbert was the best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, if you had an actual NFL draft and every player was in the pool, I don't know who's picking for, but I tell you that guy ain't getting Justin Herbert. Yeah, I mean, it would be Mahomes, Allen, and Herbert in some order. Would be my guess.
I think it's that order that you said. It'd be Mahomes, then Allen, then Herbert. I think
would be the right, and then my Jalen Hurts guy would be up there.
And then Taylor Heineke would be 461st.
Oh man,
Justin Herbert though is on the love list.
Carson Wentz 462. Anyway, Justin Herbert, I think he's going to have a monster game. Whether he's the best quarterback in the NFL, I don't know, but he might be the best quarterback in fantasy this week. He comes in at number 4 of my quarterback ranks, but wouldn't be surprised if he winds up at number 1 here. We've talked about this matchup again. Tennessee, really good against the run, really bad against the pass, which is one of the reasons why Mike Williams made the love list as well. Over those last 4 games, incidentally, coincides with Keenan Allen coming back. Justin Herbert's averaging 21.5 fantasy points per game. He's averaging almost 44 pass attempts per game. You see it there on your screen, the game log, in terms of how good he's been going. Second most passing yards allowed per game, the Tennessee Titans. Over the last 4 weeks, they're also giving up the second most touchdown passes this year. Herbert should be nothing short of spectacular. If you made the playoffs with him as your quarterback, you're feeling good this week.
Yep, I'm with you. And I think the most encouraging thing is that the Chargers were leading that game against the Dolphins basically the entire way after the first quarter, and Justin Herbert still threw the ball 51 times. So it's clear that they are committed to throwing the ball. He's not running as much as you'd like this year. I think a lot of that was with the ribs earlier on. He has had some rushing games, but regardless, if he's going to throw it 51 times, then he's going to be a top 4 quarterback in fantasy.
The only concern, and it's a very small one, the only concern is if the pace of play in this game isn't that much, because I do think Derrick Henry's going to have a lot of success running the ball against the Chargers, and I just think they're going to grind out these 10-yard drive, 10-play drives against the Chargers. It's going to be Derrick Henry over again.
We're due for a big Derrick Henry game. It looked like it was going to be last week, and then he had 2 yards in the second half. But it's coming at some point, and it might be against this bad Chargers rushing defense. Let's talk about Dak Prescott, a guy who used to throw the ball 51 times.
Doesn't need to anymore.
Yeah, now it's the Zeke and Pollard show, but he's still on the love list.
Micah Parsons is super annoying for those of us that have Dak Prescott in fantasy, because they don't need to get into shootouts anymore.
Yeah.
That defense is really good. Having said that, again, we talked about this game earlier in the show. We think this is one of the sneakier, higher-scoring games. Again, I think it's the 4th highest on the slate at the moment, and it's a good matchup with the Jaguars. I mean, they're bad against the secondary. They're given the 3rd most passing yards per game over the last 4 weeks. They've been allowed 22.4 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks over that stretch. The last 5 quarterbacks, Jay Croucher, the last 5 quarterbacks to face the Jacksonville Jaguars have all scored at least 17.5 fantasy points. Dak Prescott gets that number easily this week as well. He's my number 7 quarterback. Dak is back.
That's a weird game. Cowboys 4-point favorites, total 48. I don't know what to make of the Jags. What are the Jaguars? They beat Baltimore with Lamar Jackson when he was playing, and then they have the big win over Tennessee in Tennessee, and then between that they get blown out by 26 by the Lions.
They also went to LA and kicked the crap out of the Chargers in the beginning of the year when we thought the Chargers were good.
They lost to the Texans. They're the only team to lose to the Texans. They get blown out by 26 by the Lions. What the hell is this team?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's very confusing. I don't like it. I don't like when things don't make sense.
It makes no sense at all. What makes less sense? A question for you. What makes less sense? The Jaguars as an NFL team?
Yes.
Or the Jaguars mascot wearing a thong?
Yeah, well, I think it's right. It's on brand.
It is on brand. It doesn't make sense. Because he's got fur. You can't see any private parts. He doesn't need a thong. He's not covering anything up because he doesn't have anything to cover up. You would assume that whatever he has to cover up is covered by the fur.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's a kid-appropriate mascot.
Nothing makes sense.
Until then he wears the he wears the string bikini, like he's like, and all of a sudden it's up his butt.
Yeah.
And it's the thong, it's the he's all of a sudden he's like he's on Instagram promoting Bang Energy or whatever. Like he's it's like
nothing makes sense in Duval. It's like a David Lynch movie.
Yes.
Mulholland Jags.
Anyway, here's what does make sense. Starting Dak Prescott at quarterback this week.
Yep. Let's get to some others receiving votes. Headlined by a guy playing tonight, the immortal Brock Purdy.
All right, so this is you got to squint to sort of see it. The argument for Brock Purdy is that he's healthy enough to start. He had the oblique, but he's going to go as well. Seahawks defense really bad. Since week 10, they're giving up 410 offensive yards per game, fourth most in the NFL. Brock Purdy has averaged 18 fantasy points per game over the last 2 weeks. He's had multiple touchdowns passes in both games this year. Dump offs to Christian McCaffrey that he then runs for 40 yards.
They count.
Those still count. So Brock Purdy, I do think, is a risky but viable QB2 this week. I love Aaron Rodgers. We just talked about this. Aaron Rodgers at home, off the bye, at Lambeau, makes another statement. Again, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He wants to show everyone what they're missing out. And look, no one's ever excited about starting Matt Ryan, and that includes the Colts. No one wants to actually start Matt Ryan, but I do think if you're truly desperate and you're scrounging around, and like you've been beaten the waiver wire for the Mike Whites and the Brock Purdy's of the world, you're in a deeper league, I think you could do worse than Matt Ryan, who faces a Vikings defense that since week 10 is allowing 335 passing yards per game, over 300 passing yards in 5 straight. Harrison Smith didn't play last week. We don't know if he's going to be able to play this week as well. That's a big loss to that secondary. It's hard to think Matt Ryan could be okay here.
Matt Ryan's your 3 a.m. closing time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're definitely on fantasy football pregame, we always do how drunk do you have to be to start this guy? We always do our beer goggles segment, and I'd want to be pretty buzzed to start Matt Ryan. But I have to tell you, there have been times, Jay Croucher, in my life when I have made decisions pretty hammered. Pretty hammered.
There are worse decisions you can make.
And not all of them I've regretted.
Yeah.
There's some decisions that I've made completely blasted out of my mind, and I woke up in the morning and said, you know what? All right.
Yeah.
That was all right.
Good for you, Matthew. Good for me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Now, I will admit that sometimes the next morning, are like, you know what? I don't regret that at all. And then, the woman next to me is just like, oh, God, what'd I do? Right? I mean, so I understand, listen, it's not always two-sided, but I'm just saying there's the times I've made decisions drunk where I've been okay with them.
Okay, well, let's talk about some more decisions.
I thought to be honest with you, I thought that would get a better reaction. I gotta be honest with you. I thought that was a pretty good joke. I didn't think you saw where I was going, honestly. I thought I was going to get a good laugh out of you, and I didn't.
Apparently the control
room loves it, just so you know. They like that. They like that.
Boy. All right.
I mean, come on. Just imagine you got drunk, and then the next morning you wake up next to me. Yeah. That's a bad night. Oh, boy. That's a bad night, Jay Croucher, for you.
For me personally, that would be a very strange evening. It would be a very strange evening. It would take some strange turns.
Listen, I will say this. The NBC Sports holiday party is tonight.
Yeah, so a boy can dream.
Well, you never know. Night's young, Jay Croucher. Yeah. Let's you and I do some shots together.
I'd rather wake up next to Jared Goff.
Fair enough.
And he's on the hate list, though, for you.
He is, unfortunately, on the hate list. Look, Jared Goff was on the love list last week. He showed up as a top 3 fantasy quarterback. He was just awesome. I think the tune changes. One of the reasons we loved Jared Goff last week, he was at home. He's great at home. This week, not so much. He's on the road. We don't like it. He traditionally has not been good on the road. He's traditionally not been good when he's under pressure. He's traditionally not been good in cold weather. All 3 things are going to happen this week. He's on the road with the Jets. We expect it to be cold weather. And oh, by the way, the Jets really bring pressure. And so when he is under pressure, Jared Goff has struggled. Look, in 3 of the 5 road games this year, he's had under 7 fantasy points. Just absolutely brutal. He's averaging just 8.5 fantasy points per game on the road this year. He has just 2 touchdowns on the road this year. And then you think about the Jets, who have allowed the second fewest passing touchdowns per game this year. It's a very low over-under in this one, 44.5. Last I saw it. We actually expect that because the Jets will be able to move the ball against the Lions. They're favored here.
Yes.
Right?
It's pick right now. It's actually gone back to pick.
So the Jets open is the favorite, but
it's been moving around. The thing with Jared Goff is if you go back through his game log, He's literally never had a good game on the road as a Detroit Lion, outside of like one random game early last year against the Bears, who have an awful defense. The past 2 games he was on the road this year against the Giants and the Bears, he had 401 total yards and 1 touchdown. And those are much, much worse defenses than the Jets that he's going to get this week.
There's very few people that are like, woohoo, I'm in Detroit. But Jared Goff is one of them.
He loves Detroit.
He loves Detroit.
He loves the dome. Loves
He
a
loves the
controlled
dome.
environment.
Controlled environment.
Climate.
He likes a clean pocket.
Yes.
Yeah.
Loves a clean pocket.
So anyway, and I don't think he's going to have that. He's my QB 19 this week.
Yep. Also probably not going to have a clean pocket is Derek Carr going up against Matthew Judon, who has 14.5 sacks. The quietest 14.5 sack season through 14 weeks in NFL history. I don't think people even... How many people...
He's been unbelievable.
What percentage of NFL fans could pick Matthew Judon on the street? I'm going to say like 6%.
I would take the under.
Yeah, he's got 14.5 sacks, and Derek Carr is going up against
He's another
him.
guy with just... Part of the problem is he doesn't have a cool nickname. It's just... There's no branding there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he needs to be just Mean Joe Green or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, he just
MJ
needs to...
Money, something.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
We'll think about it.
Like, when you think about sort of the,
It's a cool name, though, at least. It's not Mike White. Matthew Judon.
Oh, the Judon part of it. I thought you meant Matthew.
It's too easy.
Is a cool name, but I agree with you. But listen, between the two of us, we have 14 sacks on the season. We've had a great year, the two of us.
With Matthews.
The Matthews are crushing it. Here's the thing. I 100% agree with you about Derek Carr struggling. There have been 3 quarterbacks this year, only 3, that have scored even 17 fantasy points against the Patriots. 2 of them had rushing touchdowns in those games. Derek Carr, not the most mobile of guys. He does get Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow back this week, and while we're not recommending Renfrow, and Waller's only startable because he's a tight end, he does get some more passing weapons back. But to our point about quarterbacks struggling under pressure, to your point about Judon, Derek Carr and the Raiders having to face a Patriots team that is 3rd in the NFL in pressure rate. I think they struggle. Since week 10, they're allowing under 200 passing yards per game. Josh McDaniels seems to just want to run the ball.
Yep.
Like just Josh Jacobs. And maybe he learned his lesson from last week, but I don't want to take the chances in the fantasy playoffs. Derek Carr on the hate list.
Yep. Okay, we're going to go to break. When we come back, Thursday Night Football preview. Didn't think Geno Smith v. Brock Purdy would be a blockbuster at the start of the year, but it is, and we'll talk about it.
And here we are.
All right, Sunday Night Football. Saquon Barkley and the New York Giants battled Matthew Berry's Washington Commanders in this NFC East showdown. Playoff spot on the line. Sunday, 7 Eastern on NBC and Peacock. Look at Taylor Heineke. He looks like Brad Pitt and Troy.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
He looked awesome. And Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones does not make the
Daniel
promo card.
Jones does not make the cut.
By the way, also the return of Chase Young. Chase Young expected to be active and playing for my Commanders and your Commanders, America's Commanders, on Sunday night here on NBC and Peacock. Going to be a great game.
7-5-1.
7-5-1.
It's unbelievable.
8-5-1.
Feels like both of these teams are 4-8-1, but they're not. And whoever wins this is very likely going to the playoffs. 2 other teams in the playoff mix in the NFC. San Francisco 49ers, they will be in the playoffs, and then the Seattle Seahawks, who kind of need to win tonight to get in because they are sliding a little bit.
Yeah. I'm rooting for the 49ers as a Commanders fan. I'm rooting for the Niners, and by the way, Giants fans should also be rooting for the Niners.
Yep. I think the wheels are coming off the Seahawks. I don't think
a little
they're very
bit.
Good. I don't think
the truth of the matter, listen, I'm not the biggest Pete Carroll fan. Like, I think Russ Wilson bailed him out, and the defense bailed him out quite a bit many of the years. But I will say this: I think he's done a phenomenal job this year for a team that everyone wrote off. And everyone's just like Geno Smith, whatever. The entire team, like Pete Carroll and Shane Waldron, their offense coordinator, they've done a great job.
Yep.
Kudos to the entire Seattle organization. This is a tough matchup, though. So let's talk a little quarterbacks here. I think you're still starting Geno Smith. We'll just look again. It is a tough matchup here. Played San Francisco in week 2. He had 6.1 fantasy points per game. It was one of only the 2 games this year they didn't throw a touchdown pass. One of only 3 games where he had under 200 passing yards. But he is more confident. He's more in that system as well. If there is a weakness to the Niners defense, it is that secondary. They're actually 23rd against the pass over the last 4 weeks. I know they didn't show it last week against Tampa Bay, but since week 8, he's the 5th best quarterback in fantasy on a points per game basis. He's had 7 straight games with 2 or more touchdown passes. They may be down in this game as well and throwing, especially given the fact that the run game is banged up and they won't have a lot of success in the running game. I do think Geno Smith is a low-end QB1 tonight.
Okay, let's talk about the pass catches in this game. How many are you comfortable starting?
Well, before we move off, let's talk real quickly about Brock Purdy.
Okay, let's talk Brock Purdy.
Well, we talked about him a little bit here. It's other
he was
receiving
on the love
votes
list
as well. So, again, he's in my QB 13 this week. So he's a risky QB2, but he's on track to play tonight. All right. So what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about the pass catchers?
Yeah, I want to talk about the pass catchers.
I'll talk about the pass catchers with
How
you.
many are you comfortable starting? I think Lockett and Metcalf, you just have to start. Ayuk, I think, has done enough with Brock Purdy. And then you're probably starting George Kittle just because you have to and it's tight end. But who are you feeling good about in this game?
I feel good about Tyler Lockett in this game. You know, I mean, again, like he's had 6 straight games with a receiving touchdown. You think about week 2 against the Niners, 9 for 107 on 11 targets in that game as well. DK Metcalf, very quietly, the 7th best wide receiver in fantasy since week 8, averaging over 18 fantasy points per game. He's got a 28% target share. Now, he struggled the last time these two teams faced, but both guys inside my top 20. Both guys I think you're absolutely starting. As you see on your screen there, what they did against the Niners the last time they played. But a lot of football's been played since week 2.
A lot of football has been played since then. Let's talk about Ken Walker, because I think Ken Walker is probably the guy that the most people who play fantasy are going to have the toughest time with this week. I think he is kind of the seminal guy. Am I starting Ken Walker or Najee Harris or J.K. Dobbins in that spot? Because there's just so many factors swirling.
Damn.
Toughest defense in football to go against. He's got the ankle that he's dealing with. He wasn't playing well, or at least he wasn't being efficient the full month leading up to his injury. Saved by touchdowns.
Saved by touchdowns. That's exactly right. And I think he's got a chance at getting into the end zone tonight. But I would agree with you. I think I'm much more concerned about Ken Walker's floor than I am excited about his upside. Right? Like in the other, meaning that like, I think there's a chance that Ken Walker has a decent game here, that he gets in the end zone, and that just pure volume gets him there to like a usable, top 20-ish running back performance. But I also think there's a chance that he has like 3.6 fantasy points, that they just completely shut him down, that he's not 100% healthy, that they use some Tony Jones and Travis Homer in this one as well, and that he does have a bad game. So he is a very risky start. And I don't know that the reward necessarily matches the risk. The Niners have allowed the fewest rushing yards to opposing running backs this season. No running back has reached 60 rushing yards in a game against the Niners so far this year. 3 of the past 4 games, to your point, Kenneth Walker averaging 3 yards per carry. 3 of his past 4 healthy games. Now, again, you've been saved by the touchdowns. If they get in close, my expectation is they'll go to him. So maybe he falls into the end zone here. He's my running back 23. He is a hope for a touchdown flex tonight. It's the playoffs, and you may not have a better choice, but yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of how lucky do you feel. I don't think he has a massive game here. I think what you're hoping for is a floor game.
Yep, I think you can feel okay going down with Ken Walker, and I think one thing is that he was getting more receiving work. He had like 6 for 55 against Tampa Bay in Germany. Like, he has been used more in the pass game, and in a game where I think they're really going to struggle against the San Francisco defense, maybe he does get some dump offs, and you're probably hoping for 5 receptions for 25 receiving yards, and then 35, 40 yards on the ground, and then a touchdown, which I think is viable.
Right. The only concern there is, do they bring in Travis Homer? If he's less than 100%, if they don't feel like the ankle is 100%, do they bring in? Because that's often Travis Homer's role, right? I mean, and so earlier in the season, Homer was a bit banged up, and Walker was getting all that work, and I don't know. Travis Homer played 91% of the snaps last week. He didn't do anything with them, but he played 91% of the snaps last week. And so, I don't.
At least with Walker, it's not. I know you're weighing up a decision of Ken Walker, Latavius Murray, right?
I'm in a league, yeah.
Walker, he at least does have home run potential where no matter what defense he plays, he can break one. He can break a 60-yarder.
This is true.
In ways that guys like Latavius Murray probably can't.
This is 100% factually correct. So anyway, but we're telling you what you already know, right? Which is that Ken Walker's a risky start. We know about the talent. It's a tough matchup. We don't know about the health. He doesn't have an injury designation going tonight. He's not
been full practice.
Pete Carroll said he was going to be listed as questionable, and then he actually wasn't. Sometimes I don't think Pete Carroll's actually at practice. I feel like Pete Carroll just sort of goes out to the podium and like somebody else is running the team.
Yeah.
There's sometimes because there's a disconnect there. I don't know what's going on exactly.
When Pete Carroll was explaining that Ken's got an ankle, but it's not a sprain, it's a strain, I'm like, I don't really feel comfortable with this diagnosis at all, but
a little nutty.
He will be out there. Before we get into our BetMGM props, one I want to throw at you, Matthew. This is my favorite bet in football at the moment, and it's got to do with this game.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Kyle Shanahan, Coach of the Year, is 40-1 on
Okay.
BetMGM. He's not one of the top 7, 8 favorites. I make San Francisco have got a really easy schedule as well. After this, they got a game against the Cardinals, the Raiders, and they've got one other that is an easy one. I think they're plus 350 to run the slate. If they run the slate, they end the season on a 10-game winning streak. They go 13-4, probably get a 2 seed, having started 3 different quarterbacks, including going 6-0 with Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy. I just think that if he does that,
that's a great call.
And if Nick Sirianni, everyone's like Nick Sirianni is a huge favorite. Nick Sirianni plays Dallas next week in Dallas.
Right.
That's their biggest game of the season, with no disrespect to the primetime game against the Commanders.
Yeah.
If he loses that game, that's his one big game. That's like Ohio State losing to Michigan.
Sure.
Like, there is going to be a stench around his case if he loses the one big game of the season. And so Shanahan, I think, is right there.
Yeah, and I'll just tell our listeners and our viewers, like, I know that awards props, that's your money spot right there. That's something you're really good at. So I like that call at BetMGM, really especially that Kyle Shanahan 40-1 to win Coach of the Year, because you could easily see that. It's also, by the way, there's been so much talk about Sirianni over the year that I feel like people are sort of over him.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. That's not fair to Nick Sirianni, but the fact is that you sort of become, it's one of the reasons why Belichick, who should have won Coach of the Year for a decade straight, only won once. Because you just sort of get a victim of your own success. Oh, yeah, you're good. You expect it. And I feel like we're sort of there with Sirianni a little bit, where we're just like, yeah, the Eagles are good. We get it.
It's going to be hard for him to win if he loses to Dallas. That's such a big game.
1,000%.
Like, everyone knows Shanahan's a great coach, and also he's never won it before.
Right.
And he is a Coach of the Year caliber coach.
He wins 6 in a row with Brock Purdy, his third different quarterback. I'm with you. That makes it becomes the second seed in the NFC. 41 is a pretty good bet. And by the way, when you do bet that at BetMGM, use promo code BARRY. For a risk-free first bet up to $1,000.
Speaking
at
of
BetMGM.
that, Matthew Berry, the action never stops at BetMGM. Sign up now using bonus code BARRY, and your first wager is risk-free up to $1,000. Simply download the BetMGM app today or go to betmgm.com and enter bonus code BARRY, BERRY, to make your first wager risk-free up to $1,000.
If you're watching on TV, you see, or on the clip, you just see there's a picture of somebody in the app. I just want to be clear, that's not me.
No.
Even though we're talking about the promo code Barry, but that's actually actor Jamie Foxx.
Yes,
just so you know.
Often confused with Matthew
We do
Berry.
get often confused a little bit, but I just want to be clear about that. You're hearing promo code Barry at BetMGM, but the picture is actually of Jamie Foxx.
It is actually of Jamie Foxx, but that's okay. By the way, the one game I forgot, the easy game on the 49ers schedule, it's against the Commanders. So that's why I forgot it. Yeah, just tucked away in San Francisco.
I don't think that's an easy game.
It's not an easy one, but they'll be big favorites.
I think they will. I will think they will win that game, especially because the game's in San Francisco. But I don't think that's an easy game.
It's not an easy one. All right, let's talk most bet props at BetMGM tonight for 49ers at Seahawks. A lot of Christian McCaffrey to score first touchdown, plus 450. Anytime touchdown score, minus 165, and over 35.5 receiving yards. That seems a bit low to me. Minus 120. What's your favorite bet for tonight?
Yeah, I mean, look, and there's a reason why the public is on these Christian McCaffrey things, because he's the one thing we know, right? We know Seattle's bad against running backs and defense, and we know, like, we're not sure about Brock Purdy's health. We're not sure about Ayuk's usage without Deebo Samuel. We know Christian McCaffrey's going to touch the ball a lot in a great matchup, right? In his 6 full games with the Niners, 22.5% target share. He's getting almost 7 targets per game. So to your point about, the juice is only at minus 120 right now. I love the over 35.5 receiving yards on Christian McCaffrey. Right, again, in the 6 games with the Niners, he's averaging 48.7 receiving yards. So he's beaten this number, right, in 4 of the last 6 games. He's gone over this number in 4 of the 6 games he's played with San Francisco. And Seattle has allowed over 40 receiving yards to a running back in 2 of their past 3. Yeah, with Purdy being banged up, I give me the over on 35.5 receiving yards for Christian McCaffrey.
Yep, I like it. My best bet tonight, and it's one I say with great sadness because I do love this man, but Geno Smith to throw an interception is minus 150. He said it himself, like he's kind of forcing it. He's been forcing it lately. He had 2 picks against Carolina. Should have had 3. J.C. Horn bobbled one out of bounds.
Yeah.
Geno Smith, since week 5, leads the league in turnover-worthy plays by PFF. He is throwing it up for grabs. He makes amazing throws, but he is all boom or bust. Like, he puts it up there. He gives his guys a chance. 49 is a very opportunistic defense. I think he'll throw at least one pick tonight.
It's also a Thursday night game, and Thursday night games when teams have to prepare on a short week, it's a little ugly. You know what I mean? It gets a little ugly here. If you had to pick one guy for anytime touchdown, I think McCaffrey is not at plus money, but are you taking McCaffrey? That's one of the positive, that's one of the most bet props on BetMGM. I kind of like McCaffrey for anytime touchdown here. I'd be interested in Ayuk at anytime touchdown.
Yep, plus 130 on Brandon Ayuk. I don't mind Ken Walker at minus 105. I just think that he's going to be the goal line guy. I think they will score enough. I think Geno gives that offense enough of a ceiling. So I don't mind Ken Walker at close to even money.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. Hey, Love Hate is now up on rotoworld.com, NBCSportsEdge.com. It is, as always, 100% free. So listen, it's closing time, which means you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So for Jake Croucher, I'm Matthew Berry. We'll see you tomorrow. Good luck in Week 15. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.